Greetings, GameCola faithful, and welcome to the GameCola podcast. This is podcast number 142, and that is a fact. That is true. And I am your host, podcast commander, Joseph Martin.
Hi, I'm Anna Bryniarski, social media trash queen and staff writer sometimes, I guess.
I am James Pelster, and I am the co-administrator of the GameCola YouTube channel.
I'm Alex the Jeddy Jedraszczak, your editor-in-chief of GameCola.jed.
Got it. I'm John Rizzi. I guess I'm exclusively the Danganronpa commentator.
Only Danganronpa.
Anna, you did in fact ruin the thing that we had going, which was that every single person on this podcast name was going to be Jay before you rejoined.
This happened to me once before where it was all of you and then me.
Yep.
Well, I am also Alex Jeddy, so it's like we get this transition from A to A/J
Yeah.
to J
Yeah,
to J
that's
to J.
true. It's the AJ Cola podcast.
Jeddy,
Yes.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
It's not about video games, but it is about GameCola, I guess, tangentially.
Okay.
What is the ratio of people who call you Alex and Jeddy or other names aside from that
On GameCola or like in
your life?
in my life, there is a reasonable portion of people who know me who call me Jeddy, and sometimes it's surprising to hear because, you know, at work, nobody knows me as Jeddy, but like in my like longtime friends, people who've known me on the internet for an extended period most call me Jeddy. So like Paul calls me Jeddy. I have some very old friends from like high school who call me Jeddy, but like people who know me at work call me Alex. And yeah, it's not quite 50-50. I would say like 30% of people who I talk to on a regular basis call me Jeddy.
That's interesting.
Interesting. Now we can just add that to the GameCola lore bucket
Yep.
that everybody knows about. Today on the podcast, we are going to talk about video games, not just names. Video names?
Video
Oh, wow.
names.
Video names.
That rhymes, and that's the only through line.
Name Cola podcast.
We have a couple questions from the GameCola Discord, which you can find on our Twitter or on our website, or probably other places. Or if you just ask us, we'd probably give you the invite link, unless we're asleep or something.
Mm-hmm.
But let's knock out this short one real quick, because there's only one person on this podcast who can answer it. From Brancliff. Did you get all the Bell tickets at the end of May Day?
No.
Brancliff also follows up with, I missed out on the last few.
I didn't.
Anna, what is Brancliff talking about?
So
What are
for
these
May Day,
words?
there was a special island ticket where you could go to an island. You can bring any of your belongings with you. You got a shovel when you got there, and you got some fruit once you were going through this maze that was on the island. And so the thing about fruit in Animal Crossing New Horizons is that if you eat fruit, it gives you the power to, with a shovel or an axe, break rocks, or with a shovel, like, uproot an entire tree. I think you also you got, like, a worn axe at first, and then the materials to build an axe. And so you go through this maze getting fruit and the tools and everything, and then at the end there are bell vouchers, which you trade in at the Nookling store for actual bells. Also at the end of the maze was Rover, who, if you've played any of the other Animal Crossings, Rover is the first person you talk to in the first Animal Crossing game and in New Leaf, who does the whole, hey, what's your name, where are you going, blah blah blah, whatever. And he gives you a briefcase, which you can put in your house, which it is currently in my bedroom in my Animal Crossing house, because I didn't know where else to put it. And so at the very beginning of the maze, there's a section where there are a few bell vouchers that you can't get to, and I don't know how you would get to them, because I was like running through looking to see if I had gotten like all the fruit, if I was missing something, but it just, I don't know how you would have gotten in. But no, I didn't get the bell vouchers that were at the very beginning. You would have had to break like 3 rocks, and I wasn't able to. So, no. The answer was no.
Do you think they used a maze because it sounds a little bit like May?
Maybe. I don't know anything about May Day. That's not really it's not really a holiday in the United States, so I don't know.
I'm glad we finally mentioned what game this was a part of about halfway through that tangent, because I was about to say, is this in real life or in some kind of
Yeah,
game?
not say Animal Crossing earlier.
No, you didn't.
You eat fruit and it gives you the power to break rocks. I mean, you don't.
That's what I do every day.
The thing is that I knew so well what they were talking about that I was like, no, I know what this is. And no.
Yep. I run a tree uprooting business, and all I do is I just bring my little shovel over to somebody's house to just eat an apple, and then just boom, trees.
And then I just take their tree and then sell it or put it somewhere else for them.
Yeah.
And also, if you touch a toilet, you lose this ability forever until you eat more fruit.
Yeah. In this Animal Crossing, if you use the toilet, you get, like, the fruits that you've eaten, you can be done, you excrete the fruit.
I mean, that's how toilets work.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The little counter that says, like, because you can only have eaten, like, 10 fruits or something at most. So that little count, if you sit on a toilet, or go into, like, one of the porta potties, the little counter starts going down.
That's very silly.
It's great.
I have a topic.
Oh.
Jeddy, I have a topic. What?
Moving on.
So, the house where I live has little awnings over the windows, and there are some birds that are nesting under the awning.
Mm-hmm.
So is this in Animal Crossing or in real life?
This is in real life.
Okay.
Oh.
Birds.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we were supposed to talk about birds.
I see.
I'm so glad. Thank you, Jeddy.
Yes.
Is there another through line, or is this just making sure we got to talk about birds?
Oh no, we just had a brief pause and I decided to interject with birds.
Okay, as long as we're all on the same page. Anna did say at the beginning that she wanted to talk about birds, so I'm glad we got that covered and we can move on. We spent a lot more time on this question than I thought we would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this other question comes from Axe. It's a little more broad, so I think everybody will have an opportunity to answer. Basically, how much or how little of a game do you find yourself typically remembering? Is it specific things like story or mechanics?
I am consistently amazed at how little of a story I will remember despite having played a game like a year ago or something. Like I'll remember a bunch of main points, but I'll be like really surprised at some like side story that I just completely forgot, or that some character even existed or something.
Yeah, for me it always just depends on the game. So like I played Uncharted 4 recently, and while the gameplay was like super generic and mostly watching, I loved the story and I loved the characters, and I will remember all of them for a long time. But I'm also playing through Kingdom Hearts. That story sucks. and is completely convoluted.
We're now going to get thousands of angry emails calling in.
Okay.
You said Kingdom Hearts story is bad.
Okay.
I'm gonna let me address that, James, because I know lots of people who play Kingdom Hearts. I think that they would agree that the story is terrible.
The thing is I don't disagree either. I think the story is incredibly convoluted.
I will say that I will give that the characters are strong, but the story is super convoluted that it just gets like I just stopped following it after a while. But the gameplay is so much fun.
Like, if you talked about the story of Kingdom Hearts, you could basically a friend of mine pointed this out, and he says you could replace the words light and darkness and heart in Kingdom Hearts and with just any arbitrary word, and they would still have just as little actual meaning because of how much those terms are just thrown around without any sort of
fair.
Like, you could just completely replace heart, the word heart in all of the scripts, with like potatoes, and it would make just as much sense because they there's no way, like, heart is just a fallback term for like any kind of story MacGuffin that they need to, or motivation that they need to throw in there. So, which is just, it's hilarious at times. So, like, obviously it's not as bad, if you're actually playing the game, but people have made compilations of Kingdom Hearts where, except it's only the parts where they say heart, light, or darkness. And, like, it is just the most incomprehensible thing.
It is 4 hours long.
Yeah, it's like, it's just completely incomprehensible.
Oh, God. But yeah, but the gameplay is super fun. It is super, it's like if Doom was like a fast action RPG.
Well, Doom, it's got the fast action part going for it.
But yeah, it's so much to think about at such a fast pace. It's so much fun to play through.
But would you remember the specific mechanics, would you say, or would you just remember like the general battle, like the battle system, or would you remember, oh hey, this boss is weak to this thing, or oh hey, here's the strategy for defeating large groups of enemies, that sort of thing? Is it all of the mechanics, or is it just the more broad ones that you use in basically every battle?
Probably the more broad ones, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. So for me, I think, kind of similar to John, I would say it depends very wildly based on the game itself. Some games I will remember all of the story in, and then others I will just remember the general points, and I'll be like, wait, when did that happen? Or whoa, I didn't know, I didn't remember this happened now. Or some other games I'll just not remember the mechanics, and I'll just be playing the game again after a while, and I'll be like, oh god, I don't remember what any of the buttons do. And that is always a fun time, let me tell you, when you don't remember what buttons do what. It's really interesting because I've been recently going back and replaying a couple games that I played a few years ago, and I was shocked at like how much I enjoyed the game, but at the same time how little I actually remembered going back to it. And like I really thought at the time that I remembered so much about the game itself, and then I came back to it and I'm like, oh no, I don't remember this at all. And it's really weird to experience that, where you go back to a game and just everything seems foreign, or like it seems familiar and yet it isn't, if that makes sense. It's a very strange sensation to go back and experience that.
Like, I mostly remember the overarching story. For the most part, I don't remember a lot of small things that happened. One of the exceptions is like games like Ace Attorney and Valhalla, where most of it is story. But I was just thinking about the bird game again, where I forgot an entire half of Hatoful Boyfriend existed, where it was I forgot about the messed up part of Hurtful Boyfriend, where it's just that game. And then even like the sequel, I forgot entire parts of it until I honestly just sat down and thought about it. So for the most part, unless I'm really, really trying to think about it, I usually only remember like the overarching story, and I remember like just bits and pieces, especially funny parts. But unless the game is mostly story, I don't remember every single thing. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other examples. Like, Night in the Woods is definitely another one where I'm just like, I remember most of the entire story because most of the game is story. Or something like Earthbound, where I remember the overarching story, but I forget one or two things that happen. Like, I might forget an entire section of the game.
If you've been listening to the GameCola podcast for a long time, you may have come to suspect that I have a story graphic memory. Which is why I can't really replay any game where the narrative is a major component, because I generally Except in really specific cases where it was like, oh, I was 11 when I played this video game. I remember stories very vividly, to the point where I have working memory of a lot of stories of video games that I have never played and only have heard about on this podcast.
Huh.
Like, I'm pretty sure I could give you a pretty solid summary of the plot of E7. I've never played it, but Jeddy explained it one time, and now I know it forever.
Huh.
Or Master Blaster Zero.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm very much not like that. For me, like, even with like really story-driven games, there's parts like I'll remember a lot of the like if there's a scene to me that really stands out, I'll definitely remember that scene in very specific detail. But like if you asked me to remember what happens on any individual given day in, say, Valhalla or in on any particular trial day in Ace Attorney, I would not be able to tell you what that is, except in very, very specific circumstances. Like if it were a game that I 100% just absolutely adored and put a bunch of time into, maybe so. Like Danganronpa V3, for instance, I could probably tell you a lot of what went on in individual scenes, but even then, I probably wouldn't remember everything. It's just way too much for my brain to remember. I just remember the stuff that I really either enjoy or that just really stood out to me. And then I come back to it later and I'm like, whoa, I didn't remember this other bit.
I will say that the one recent experience I've had with like not remembering the story of a game at all from a game that I played when I was like 12 was Pokemon, the second Pokemon Ranger game, I think Shadows of Almia or something, where I was playing and it was like, man, I've definitely played this entire video game before and I don't remember any of this. I get like little waves of like, oh, that looks kind of familiar. I think part of it is not really a whole lot happens in this video game.
Yeah, that's generally not a good sign of a good game.
And there's certain things where it's like, I don't know if I remember this or if it's just very predictable that, hey, the two kids that you were friends with in your ranger school and then you separate from them for a little while, they're gonna come back and be your friends again. Like, they're not just going to not be relevant for the rest of the story. And I feel like I remember that, but also, like, I might have just had a little bit of narrative savviness. I think we've covered this pretty thoroughly. So let's move on to some fun news. First, I wanted to bring up that Nintendo's new sales, quarterly sales came out. And of particular note, going back to Animal Crossing, as of March 31st, Animal Crossing has sold 11 million copies.
Good.
In quarantine.
Which is...
Yeah, no, this is like the perfect time.
Yeah, it's like, that's like the first 11 days of it being available. And I think now it's up to, if the numbers that I read are to be believed, it's 13 million.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
Which 13 million puts it above Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee at about 12 million. Splatoon 2 at about 10 million. Super Mario Party at about 10 million. And Mario Brothers Deluxe at about 6.5 million.
Nice.
So it's, I think, the sixth best-selling Switch game if you're combining Sword and Shield into one game.
Dang. I also heard that Sword and Shield surpassed the 3DS games sales.
Let me have a look. I can look at that real quick. Sword and Shield is 17.37.
My personal opinion of that game is not what I think most people would be.
Yeah, it's about 1 million more than Sun and Moon and X and Y. But you also have to think, like, I don't know. There's other things at play with Sun and Moon. I mean, like, I would even argue that there's 3 sets of 3DS Pokemon games.
Yeah, because you've got
there
X
may
and
be
Y,
a little bit of bloating. X and Y, Sun and Moon, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
Which I
and
just want to say here, Omega Ruby. Okay, listen, Ultra Moon and Ultra Sun are basically Sun and Moon. Let's not kid ourselves here. So
they're also much lower on the 3DS sales chart. They're at like 8 million, and the other ones are
those
above
they did
10 million.
not do well. They did not do well.
Animal Crossing has also done better now than all other previous Animal Crossing games, at least that are listed that I can find numbers for.
Not a surprise considering the circumstances. Like, that is, of all the games that I imagine, I'm not a psychology wizard here, but I would imagine of all the games that you would want to probably play, a nice, relaxing, feel good game that you can just put a little bit of time into every day. Like,
yeah,
it's the perfect Nintendo could be the one behind this whole quarantine situation, and I wouldn't be surprised because it is just the perfect. All right, I don't actually believe that. Just
no,
to be
I
clear.
know.
But like, if it came out that was the case, I wouldn't even be that surprised, just because of how perfect of a time it is for that kind of a game to be releasing. Like, it's almost incredible how perfect that kind of game is.
I bought Doom Eternal the same day Animal Crossing came out. What does that say about my mental health?
Yeah, hey, it just means you have good taste in video games. You could buy both. It means you have good taste.
True.
Plus, it means fantastic memes.
Yes.
All of the crossover jokes I've seen are just absolutely hilarious. That's the one thing. Like, I'm not a fan of Animal Crossing, personally. I got into it back in Wild World. I tried it again. I spent a lot of time in Wild World on my DS when I was in middle school. Spent a whole bunch of time in high school during New Leaf. And then just dropped it hard because it just started to be something that I really didn't. I went from, like, just...
Was your 3DS okay?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's not a Game Boy, but it's built like a brick. But actually, though, in seriousness, I just think I've really kind of grown out of those kinds of play a little bit every day style of games, and I understand that that's not how you have to play it. You know, you can time travel and all that, and personally, I don't judge you. I think it's your own single player game. You should be allowed to do what you want with it, but what seems to be the reasonable expectation of how you play those games, just it's not something I can really get in the habit of doing, is just playing one game just a little bit every single day. It's either I can't keep up the consistency, or I want to play it more on certain days, and eventually you run out of things to do on any given day and you have to sit and wait. I think I think that's also the reason why I really don't like mobile games as a whole, is most mobile games are very much that kind of addicting style of play it a little bit every single day for the rest of your life. And then you eventually run out of things to do on a given day. So, but anyway, that's just me.
So kind of, if I can change the topic slightly.
Certainly.
Go.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, when I was hearing James say that, I feel quite the same, that I don't play games quite the same way that I used to be able to just sit and, like, play Final Fantasy XI for, like, 16 hours in a day or something. And it's been interesting where I've picked up a game that I really enjoy, like, say, Dragon Quest recently. I was enjoying that, but I could never force myself to play more than, like, 2 hours at a time. However...
Interesting.
Yes. And also, so number one, I went back. I had bought Collection of Mana, which includes the original Final Fantasy adventure, Secret of Mana, and the previously unreleased Trials of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 3. That I remember trying to play Seiken Densetsu 3 in, like, 1998, but it was like a fan translation that was 30% done, and I could never get anywhere in it. So I see all these people who have big comments about, like, oh man, this game defined my childhood or whatever, and I tried it. I gave a really good shot at it, and when I found out that I was like a third of the way through the game, I just put it down. I was completely done with it.
Jeddy,
Dang, that's pretty crazy.
I want you to like video games again.
So here's the thing. As I'm saying all this about,
I feel like it's been so long
that I hated this game. Previously, I had tried to play. I bought the remake of Mystery Dungeon, and
Pokemon Mystery Dungeon.
Yeah, it's just a remake of Mystery Dungeon, and I kind of preferred the original graphics, and so like there's none of the nostalgia. It's just playing the game again. I got like 10% through, and I was like, okay, that was fun.
I had the same thing with the Bowser's Inside Story remake. Like, Bowser's Inside Story is still one of my favorite games of all time, the original, and I went back to it, and I'm like, I don't know, like, because I haven't played the original in years, probably almost a decade by this point, but it's been so long since I last played it. I'm not entirely sure if it's just I don't love the game itself as much as I remember, that's another thing, is that you run into the problem of, well, I didn't like playing the remake of this game, but I also haven't played the original in so long.
Yeah.
How much of these feelings are a fault of the re-release or the remake or what have you, and how much of them are a fault of either nostalgia goggles kind of blinding you, or just that the game wasn't as good as you remember when you played it back when you were younger. And I think go ahead.
Or even maybe it's not as much fun the second time you play it.
Yeah, that could be. And
maybe it's a game that's good once, and then once you kind of know the whole flow of everything. I remember Bowser's Inside Story in particular, like the way it was structured made you feel like you were always really close to like making like the last thing that you needed to do, and then like you'd end up finding out that there was more stuff that you had to do, but it was done in a way that felt satisfying. Like you were completing things.
Yeah.
But then also the game was like, oh, and also here's some more video game that you get to play.
Yeah.
And I wonder if coming at it a second time may change that dynamic.
Yeah, because you already know what's coming up, and it almost seems like the road is longer, if that makes sense. Like it's a sense of, since you already kind of know what's coming up, you aren't as interested in getting through this this current bit, because you're like, oh, look how much more I have to go, rather than just being solely focused on the task at hand. Which I can kind of sort of agree with that. I think your assessment of how the game was structured is fairly accurate, at least by my almost 10-year-old, probably like 7-year-old
I remember
memory.
Very distinctly having that thought at one point during the game.
Yeah, so
do
I.
I thought I was really close to being done, and then there's like, here's 3 things you need to do, and I was like, I thought it was almost done. I'm happy I'm not.
Yeah, and then
because it's a good game.
Yeah, it's a really good. I should go back and play that again. I might, just for myself, whether to play the original. I've still got my original save file, actually, of that cartridge. I've still got the original cartridge that I bought all the way back in 2009. And going back and seeing my old save data on there still, I was like, oh man, that's so cool.
Speaking of I should go back and play that again, I decided to revisit Moonlighter.
Nice.
Moonlighter?
Yeah. I thought you said you were a fan of Moonlighter, James.
I don't know what that is.
I'm a fan of the moon.
I really like the
it's
moon.
Pretty neat.
Yeah, like
it's pretty
except
cool.
when it's in Majora's Mask, then it's not so great.
No, it's even better
that's
then.
Not the moon.
No, it's the
So-
moon. No, moon. Explain to me what this is. I honestly have no recollection of ever hearing about this before.
Oh, really?
Isn't
Who
the
was it?
Moonlighter the sun? Isn't that what lights
What
the
lights?
moon?
I couldn't
Joe,
even
stop.
who was it? Somebody definitely. I was talking about how I didn't like Moonlighter, and somebody was like, "Oh, that's my favorite game lately," and I'm like, "Oh, well, I didn't like it."
Moonlighter.
Oh, well, I hate
I really don't think.
So okay, here's the thing, is that I went into Moonlighter thinking of it in the way that you think of, like, The Legend of Zelda, or the way that you go after Hyper Light Drifter, which is that there's a series of dungeons, and you complete them. And completing them is the progression. Like, you go in once or twice, but that the concept is that you're going to be done with them. You're going to get through them with the stuff that you have. And I completely failed to understand that this is more of a roguelite sort of situation where you're not going in for the purpose of completing it. You're going in a little bit at a time to take stuff out and then go to your store, get some money, do some crafting or whatever, build up your arsenal, and then come back, and after like 5 tries, then you can beat the boss. And the point wasn't that you go in and you beat the boss. So I was getting extremely frustrated because, like, basically I was super dead every time that I went through, and I'm like, what is going wrong? Why, like, this game shouldn't be this difficult. It's like, oh, well, of course it's this difficult. You're not supposed to go through it in one time. So basically, once I understood that, I suddenly found myself doing something that I haven't done in many years, which is looking at the clock and going, how did it get to be 12:30? I need to work tomorrow.
Wow. That's interesting, but like, just to interject here, no, I have never seen this game before in my life.
Weird. No, I'm gonna have to go back. Like, after we change subjects, I'm gonna.
It seems interesting though. I like
figure out who it was.
That. So it's more of a dungeon crawler sort of thing in the sense that you make a lot of trips. Like, I'm thinking more in the style of kind of like Ultima, like the dungeon crawler. Where, well, I guess calling it like Ultima is a very very different thing. Just in terms of that kind of, in terms of progression, where you make repeated trips into a dungeon to just to kind of, I don't know if I'd call it grinding, but to build up your power, to get equipment, to get gold, so that you can go and buy better stuff. And then as you buy better stuff, you can now survive farther into the dungeon each time, etc., etc.
Yep.
Yeah. And, okay, that sounds pretty nifty, because I've been following some of that kind of stuff, and it seems interesting.
Yeah, no, without understanding that, like, the game kind of put me off, but once I was able to get into it, and it's like, okay, I just gotta keep going back in, and you need to get out before you die, otherwise you restart without any of your stuff.
Oh, yeah, the kind of, not permadeath, but, like, that is very roguelike sort of behavior, yeah.
And, so yeah, like, I beat it, in, like, over the course of a week, just kind of going at it where, like, I'm sitting here at work and I'm like, yeah, oh man, I'm gonna go play Moonlighter, and then, like, I get out of work, I immediately go play, I'm, like, eating as I play, and I'm, like, getting further and building up my weapons and everything and going to the next dungeon and, you know, beating the boss, whatever. Yeah, I guess it's strange to me, like, I had wondered if there was something different about me personally, you know, like, now that I'm older, that's just not a thing to do. Because, again, I definitely enjoyed, you know, Dragon Quest IX, but I think the fact that Dragon Quest IX is very story-focused, that as you go through, there's so much new information that it, like, wears on you almost, like you've burnt yourself out on this story. Meanwhile, Moonlighter is very story-light, and very, like, fun gameplay, so it's just me essentially doing a puzzle almost, just kind of letting myself go through here mindlessly in a way.
Interesting. I had a sort of similar experience with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, actually. I've been playing a little bit of that recently, but when I originally got the game, probably a few months back, I started playing the game, and I was really enjoying it, but then a little ways, you know, I think it's, like, still one of the first couple chapters of the game, like, just chapter 2 or something, or maybe 3. You go from kind of being fairly railroaded in terms of what you are and aren't allowed to do, to suddenly they just open up everything. Suddenly all of the 50 different shops with each selling a different category of item for a specific purpose is now open to you, and you can you have all these side quests you can go and do, some of which may be totally out of your level requirement or require you to go to a completely new area of the map. It's all the way millions of miles away, and that's an exaggeration, of course, but I just remember just stopping the game right then and there, just completely, totally, because of just how overwhelmed I was with information. Like, they just suddenly started dropping all these new mechanics on me without really giving me any sort of tutorial or nice, kind of lead in to them, or when I should use them, when I need to use them, or how important they actually are to follow. So suddenly I have, I'm not exaggerating when I say there are probably a dozen shops in every single town, and each one of them sells something that is completely different in that game, and it's a really big hurdle to jump over. The second time around, I actually, when I started going back to play it again about a month ago, I actually just went ahead, deleted my original save file, and started over from scratch. And that really helped. Just being able to go back in and kind of remember, oh, okay, I remember this, I remember these mechanics. And then, since I was already familiar with the core stuff, when they just kind of eventually dump all of this other additional stuff on top of you when the game really opens up, it was a lot more manageable to start kind of going through and going, oh, okay, so here's how this works. Okay, I don't really need to pay attention to these couple of shops at all yet. I should, and just kind of ease myself into it a little bit better. I think I would hesitate to say it's bad game design, because I know that some people certainly don't like spending the first 20 hours of a game in the tutorial, which I think is a legitimate complaint. But at the same time, I think there's also a complaint to be made for the game just suddenly dropping a whole bunch of stuff on you with no preface, and then you have no idea which of this constant influx of information you actually need to pay attention to make good progress through the rest of the game.
Yeah.
So, but I can definitely understand the being overwhelmed by just a bunch of stuff being dropped on you.
Hey, John.
Yo.
Did you perchance hear about some video game news that none of us are currently privy to and would be an interesting point of discussion for a video game news and discussion podcast?
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah. So this morning was an Xbox live stream or quarantine live stream where they had developers and literally doing over a Zoom call in their house, and then they played some in-engine trailers for new games coming out for the Xbox Series X. A lot of new IPs, but they also look generic as hell. But there's only a couple sequels. So there's Dirt 5, which is a new part of the new Dirt racing series. Looks cool. I don't know what else to say. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 got a full trailer, which honestly that's probably my most anticipated of all these, even though I never played the first one, but it looks really cool. Yakuza 7 looks goofy and zany and action-packed, as does the rest of the series.
Yep,
and then
good old Yakuza 7.
A sci-fi horror game called Scorn, which I thought looked like Alien for a second. An XCOM game called Corvus, or an XCOM style game, but there's probably something totally different with it. Adventure game called Call of the Sea, really cool art design. A game called The Ascent, again, another sci-fi action game. A horror game called The Medium, which when it started playing, I was like, ooh, there's a lot of fog, old buildings, cool rock, rock horror mixed horror music playing. Is this Silent Hill? I was like, no, but they said it was the same composer as Silent Hill. I'm like, okay, well, at least I was half right. New game from Namco called Scarlet Nexus. I thought it looked like God Eater 4 for a second, but again, dinosaur action game called Second Extinction, and then got in-engine And then there was an in-engine trailer for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which the developer said was gameplay, and it clearly was not gameplay.
Yes. Thank you, Ubisoft.
But it was running in-engine, so that's better than the CG trailer we got earlier this week.
So,
yeah.
Sort of broadly, because there's a lot of games being covered in there, so maybe just more broadly. What did you feel like was the overall message of this presentation? It sounds like to me, based on what you said, was we have a lot of new IP coming out. We are a still growing brand.
Yeah, because...
Is that what the impression you got?
Yeah, that's the impression. It's like, we got more stuff coming out that hopefully you can help us make franchises and slash more money off of. But yeah, there was no. They mentioned Halo every now and then, but they didn't show anything. And Gears 5 just came out, so I'm guessing there's no new Gears of War game in development right now, or at least good enough to show.
It's also weird with the E3 being canceled situation. I don't remember if we talked about that last podcast.
Everyone wants to do Nintendo Directs now.
Well, there's that, but there's also, like, it's hard to tell, like, when we're going to, like, if we're going to hear E3 level stuff, like, because every company, and now there's not going to be, like, one coordinated push, as far as I know. I think I've heard of a couple of rumors of people trying to put something like that together for there to be, like, some news push in, like, August, and maybe, or July, but it's all really vague and at the point where I do think that it is actually trying to happen, but it is not yet at a stage where we will know if it will actually happen.
Yeah.
If it'll all come together, or if it'll just be everybody just kind of free for alls when they make announcements. I know Nintendo has said that they're at least postponing their major. They're not doing like an E3 scheduled direct. And honestly, Nintendo's been doing a lot of their stuff just like, hey, it's 10 p.m. on Twitter. Here's the Mario.
What?
Mario Maker 2 has got an update. It's the last final update. We added a bunch of stuff. It's 10 p.m. on Twitter. Have fun.
Yep.
I think they did something like that with Animal Crossing too. But it was the Mario Maker 2 one that threw me off. I've done a little bit of the new Mario Maker stuff. It's fun. The one last thing that I thought that I would, if they were going to do a world maker, which is one of the big things that they added, that you can put all your levels into like a world with like 40 levels and 8 worlds and stuff like that.
Make your own game.
Which is cool. Basically, I do wish that they had done an option where you could like use, like, I can understand, like, at first you'd think like, oh, well, that would be like plagiarism of like using other people's levels in your world. But like, you can it'll still say like made by this person. Right? Yeah. It's just like making a playlist on YouTube. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're claiming ownership of that thing. You're just grouping it together. And it would have been cool to like do a GameCola, everybody makes a bunch of levels and we make a game out of our levels for the people who've done Mario Maker 2. That would be pretty
cool.
It sounds
but
like
right now I think it's only
what you're looking
one
for
person.
Is make a good Mario Maker level.
Make a good Mario Maker level contest. That's
Make
down
a good
the hall.
Mega Man level contest is what Jeddy is referring to.
Yeah.
Which is a cool concept. It takes a long time to put it all together, though, is the issue.
Yeah, it takes.
I think on that level.
Well, considering that, like, I've been poring over Nathaniel's reviews for like a month now.
Yeah, so have I. I'm still trying to get through them.
Yeah, and he's like extended the deadline, and it's like there is so much to look through, and this is just Nathaniel's, and that's just the stuff that he wrote. Like, imagine his notes, you know.
Let me give some context to this. So Nathaniel has been working on the Make a Good Mega Man Level 3 contest.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I know for the first 2 he was like involved.
He made some levels for that.
He made a level. I think in the second, and one of the other things he did was he was live streaming a lot back then. Mm-hmm. And he was streaming all of the levels and all of the games. And so, like, there's a lot of his community sort of built up around people being interested in it. And now in this third game, he is one of the judges. And the game is also much bigger. There are a lot more submissions.
Yeah.
And he's been working on that pretty much exclusively, I think, for a really long time. Because it's just so much. I forgot that he mentioned like he wanted some people to look over his reviews, and I imagine that there's a lot. Most recently, he posted because one of the things he did was he took a video of himself playing every single level for his own notes.
Yeah.
And recently, he got okayed to post the videos of the levels that were disqualified. One was a meme level where it was you know that one scene in Metal Gear where he's going up the ladder?
Yeah, the ladder.
And there's like it sings a song.
What a thrill!
And they just did that with Mega Man.
I saw that and I thought it was funny, but at the same time, I totally understand why you would disqualify it. And they didn't even time it right either. Like if you just start climbing the ladder, you reach the top before the song finishes playing.
Yeah.
So he just stood around there and jumped around. He's like, "No, it's all right. I'm gonna let the whole thing play. I'm gonna get the full copyright strike for this video."
And then also there was a glitch where you went down the ladder and you died.
Yeah, and then they didn't put a screen transition back down if you tried to walk back down the ladder, so it just kills you.
Wow.
But then there were other ones, and it's like there's some of them where it's like there's like 50 minutes of video and those were for
disqualified.
the ones that were disqualified.
Single levels. Like, oh my
and there's
word.
a ton, I bet. So when this game finally comes out, it's gonna be a thing. Everybody should play it.
You should play it as well. It's like there's a lot of terrible levels, but there's also a lot of levels that have had a lot of time and thought and care and effort put into them. And on top of all the effort being put in by the judges, all the people who actually compile all the levels together into the contest game and like make the whole hub world and all the other like NPC dialogue that just turn it into something really next level. It's really impressive, the amount of work and effort that goes into making these. It's really amazing.
And the engine too.
Yeah, the engine is incredible. I have never seen a more accurate Mega Man engine recreation, and much less one that can be expanded to the point that you're having to disqualify levels because they make entirely new special weapons. or change the entire ways that existing special weapons work, which that's one of the big reasons that they had to disqualify some of the levels is because not because people put in low effort, but because they put in too much effort and like also didn't read the rules. But I mean, at the same time, if you're having to disqualify levels because people put too much work into them, so to speak, that's crazy to me.
I don't even remember what we were talking about before we got there.
Neither do I.
Mario Maker level.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I guess that's sort of run its course, I guess. James, you wanted to talk about Persona for a little bit at least, right?
Yes.
We're coming up closer to the end. I guess this is sort of coming into games we've been playing in recent times, though.
Yeah.
James will have a lot to say about this one video game because Persona 5 Royale. Question?
It's just Royal. So it's weird. It's a little complicated. So it's actually in Japan it's called Persona 5 The Royal, but that sounds really awkward, but that's a thing that they do in the Japanese to international conversion, is that they remove the word the from the subtitle for whatever reason. So
but
there was
Japanese, Jeddy, you can check my work on this, check my notes. I don't think it has the word the.
It absolutely
but they really
does.
They really like putting za in front of like...
Yeah, so that's the exact phrase. Like on the box art it says the Royal. So originally, okay, we're gonna get a bit into the history here, but so Persona has a thing with re-releasing enhanced versions of their games. So it started out with Persona 3, which I think a year or two after its release had an enhanced re-release. So it released originally on the PS2. And then later in the PS2's lifetime, it had an enhanced re-release which added some additional content and some other stuff, also on PS2. Then Persona 4 came out on the PS2 as well, and a couple of years after it released, I think 3 years afterward, On the PS Vita, they released Persona 4 The Golden in Japan, which was changed to just Persona 4 Golden. And they did the same thing here with the release of the enhanced re-release of Persona 5. So it went from Persona 5 The Royal to just Persona 5 Royal.
My head hurts.
For whatever reason that is. But anywho, Persona 5 Royal is basically an enhanced re-release of Persona 5, which came out for the PS3 and PS4 back in 2017. And it just came out internationally on March 31st this year on exclusively PS4 this time. But, oh my gosh, I have put about 120 something hours into it. I just beat it at the start of this week, the week that we're recording this. And I will, just to get this out of the way, it depends on how sensitive you are to spoilers. I will not be discussing any plot spoilers or any of the totally new content that they added in Persona 5 Royal, because that is a really big part. And on top of that, actually, the company that releases it has been really trying, at least, to crack down on spoilers. You know, whether they've been successful or not is another matter entirely, but just to try and avoid spoiling anybody of the experience, because I personally, just to get my initial thoughts out of the way, I love it. I think it's incredible, and I already played and beat and put almost 200 hours into the original Persona 5 on PS3. I think it is absolutely worth buying the game again, at least assuming your financial situation is all squared away and all of that. It is really, really good. But as a quick spoiler warning, I will be talking about some of the new mechanics, some of the things that they changed compared to the original. Again, not really delving into story stuff, but absolutely into gameplay, mechanics, and structure. So basically, as you might expect, they really added a whole bunch of new polish to the game. They added a lot of new small details there. There's a lot more ambient sounds in the game, which is not something I really expect. Now you hear more like murmurs of students when you're walking around school. You can hear like the chirping of birds in various scenes.
Tweet.
Lots of ambient and sound effects, and lots of ambiance they've added in various areas, which I find interesting, of all the things that they would spend time to add. But I mean, it's a nice touch nonetheless. Makes the things feel a little bit more. What?
I'm adding the ambient noises
to the
podcast.
I was just like, ambient noise. As nice as it is in video games, I don't think it's that great for podcasts.
I think it's
ASMR.
perfect.
It's called. Oh yes, of course.
Yes, hold on. Now the game call.
Excuse me.
Hello and welcome to the GameCola
No,
podcast.
please stop. Please stop. I'm gonna scream. I'm gonna scream. Don't do this, please.
Doing the rest of the podcast like this.
I'm gonna cancel the podcast
Anyway.
if we keep doing this.
Sorry, all right, that's it. Podcast over.
John and I are both just like, nope.
Just like, all right, and we've tuned out of the GameCola podcast. Thanks
Goodbye.
for watching.
Okay, so there's cool ambient noise,
Cool
what
ambient
about
sound effects. A
mechanic
lot
stuff?
of just added little touch and polish. They've changed up a couple of the sound effects that you hear more often to have, just a little bit more pop, to have a little bit more, to be a little bit more pleasing. They've sped up. A lot of loading times actually have been drastically improved. Transitioning between areas in game is up to twice as fast in certain cases. Which, not to get into like really technical aspects, but just from a gameplay perspective, the game feels just a little bit more snappy, a little bit more responsive. They've also tweaked some of the gameplay mechanics, both in battle as well as exploration. You can now run in the overworld rather than just in the dungeons, which I really appreciate. It's not a huge game-changing thing because you didn't really have to do too much running around. The worlds aren't too incredibly expansive to the point that running around between areas was annoying. There is also a fast travel system that's fairly comprehensive in the overworld. So it was never really a huge deal, but it's just a nice touch that they added. And then on top of that, They enhanced a lot of stuff such as the stealth mechanic, or the stealth mechanic, the hiding mechanic, which was a little bit clunkily implemented in the original game. It was very cool. It was the first time they'd ever really done something like that. So for enemies in dungeons, you could hide behind blocks and stuff, and various different objects and surfaces, and get the drop on enemies and get an initial kind of surprise round in combat by taking advantage of it. But when you would, hide behind an object, the game would lock your camera angle to like a roughly 90-degree rotation, so you could only turn the camera in sort of a 90-degree window of the direction you were facing. So if, say, there was something behind you, you accidentally kind of snapped to a wall that you didn't mean to, suddenly you could be like facing completely the wrong way, and you can only rely on the minimap or nothing at all to see if there's enemies around where your location is. And that was kind of an annoyance in the original game. So they've totally kind of reworked that system. So now you can rotate the camera freely when you're hiding and you're kind of snapped up against a wall. And the way that you jump between various different points for hiding has also been greatly improved. So now you can actually manually select them with the D-pad instead of trying to angle the center of your view on the right point, which is how it worked in the original. So lots of changes there. Again, it's a lot of minor stuff, but they just go that little extra distance to making the game, even on a repeat playthrough for someone who played the original game, just making it more satisfying, less frustrating, and just more enjoyable overall. And then the really, really big one that I'm really happy they improved is the baton pass mechanic. Baton pass is a gameplay element in the battles. Oh.
It's a gameplay element where you can boost your stats and then send it over to the next Pokemon. It's banned in competitive play.
Yeah, so actually that's not too far off, honestly, of how it works. Yeah, he's making a
This
Pokemon
mechanic
reference.
is banned in Persona 5 Royal
in
competitive
play because it's broke. Okay, no.
Are you sure it's not Persona 5 Royale?
I'm positive
Only one
it is
out of
not
99
Royale.
Personas win?
I have never
there's no
seen
E
it
at the end.
Yeah, there's no E at the end. It is Persona 5 Royal, because if it were, because the Japanese name is Persona 5 The Royal, you wouldn't say The Royale.
I wouldn't say
It's
either.
not the name of an
things.
ocean liner. It's the name of a video game, not an ocean liner. The Royale.
I wouldn't say The Golden.
Well, yeah, but
think
that's more of a Japanese, kind
James,
of clunky English sort of thing.
But then that applies to the exact same argument that you started with.
All right, fair enough.
James, I agree with your conclusion, but not your argument to get
all
there.
Right. Anyway, I digress. But so
Lord.
that's okay. So in Persona, in Persona 5, the baton pass mechanic was once you to get a little bit into the details of it. So Persona 5 is a combination sort of RPG, JRPG, and sort of dating sim, kind of life simulator. There's a lot of time management involved and that sort of thing. And by hanging out with your various party members and socializing with them, you strengthen your bonds with them and gain various different abilities and skills that you can use during both normal gameplay, in the dungeons, in battle, all over the place. And one of those mechanics in the original that you would eventually unlock is something called Baton Pass, which is where if you hit an enemy in battle with an element that it's weak to, or got a critical hit or knocked it down in some way, you could pass your turn over. You would get an extra turn, but instead of using it for yourself, you could switch off to another person in your party, and their attacks would gain a boost to their strength and also a boost to the effectiveness of, say, a recovery spell, that sort of thing. But it was something that you had to unlock, and it was really satisfying once you got it all unlocked in the original game, because it meant that you could really enhance the strategy of battle. You could target, you didn't have to worry about being able to cover all of the elements in just each particular character, which is impossible for your party members, but only sort of possible for your main character. And instead, you could rely on more strategic elements, such as hitting one person's weakness with one character and then tagging off to someone else who has the remaining weaknesses, or even chaining multiple baton passes together to knock down all of the enemies and hit all of their weaknesses, which was a really cool and enjoyable, satisfying way to play. But it required ranking up potentially several times with each of your party members as you unlock them as the story progresses, and that kind of meant that new party members were a lot less useful than ones who you'd already really been hanging out with, and it almost in a way discouraged use of them until you really unlocked their higher level abilities. But now in Royal, that mechanic is now completely unlocked from the start of the game. As soon as you get a new party member, you can baton pass to them straight away. You don't need to level up with them or spend any time socializing with them. And instead, they've added new skills that you get by socializing with them instead to replace them, which is really cool. And on top of that, they've added the ability to power up the baton pass for individual characters, which you can do for everybody by the end of the game, assuming you manage your time and you want to do that, depending on if that's how you want to play it. And it goes from not just being able to power up your attacks, but if you continually chain together baton passes, you'll start recovering HP and SP, which is like your magic points and various stuff. On top of, if you chain together your full party in a baton pass chain, the final person that you pass the baton to will have their next skill that they perform cost nothing. No HP, no SP. You can essentially use any spell you want completely for free, which is a really, really cool feature. And they actually started to add a couple new challenge battles to the game that really test your ability to strategize and make skillful use of that mechanic. And I think it's really phenomenal. Of all the changes in Royal that I would say makes a lot of difference is that one right there, because it just adds a whole new level of strategy to the gameplay. And on top of all the new content that they've added, which I won't go into, but is really, really good stuff. So I highly encourage, if anybody here who's listening wants to get into the Persona series, has played the original game and doesn't sure if they want to buy this new re-release or not, I highly encourage it. Personally, I think it's absolutely worth it. Lots of cool changes, just all around a fantastic experience.
You're talking to me, aren't you?
I mean, you're kind of busy with all the stuff you've been playing, haven't you?
Maybe.
Speaking of games that John has been playing, James, you're not allowed to have played any more games.
I've talked enough.
That's exactly what I thought was going to happen.
I have been playing one other game, but I'll talk about it at some other point.
I figured that you've been saying you had a lot you wanted to say about Persona.
Oh yeah, that's the big thing I wanted to get off my chest there.
Yeah. John, what have you been playing in recent times?
Well, I already talked about Kingdom Hearts and Doom Eternal.
More like Kingdom Farts. You just have to get that out of the way. Continue.
So I've been playing Kingdom Hearts. I plowed through the first game, plowed through the second game, and I'm playing the third one right now. I beat Doom Eternal. That was a lot of fun. My roommate and I, we played Night Trap from the Nintendo Switch. That was super fun.
Did you actually beat it?
Yes, we did.
Wow. Okay, I'm impressed.
Did you have to use any guides?
No, we did not. We used our memories.
Yes.
Wow.
Cannot tell you. And then we went on YouTube and watched the actual story portion of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was fun. We beat We also played Resident Evil Remake, the first one on the PS4. That is probably one of the best and most polished games I've ever played in my life. I love that game.
Oh, yeah.
And then we played...
The Resident Evil 1 remake?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And then we played the remake of Resident Evil 3. That was fun, but really short, which I'm sure everyone on the internet agrees with. And then we also beat Uncharted 4, which is super fun.
Yeah, you've gotten a lot done.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, we have a lot of time. Might as well. Right now we're playing through Dead Rising, and I'm also playing by myself. I'm playing through Kingdom Hearts 3, and then Pac-Man World 1, and then Final Fantasy 4 also.
I always forget that there's a first Pac-Man World. I only ever hear about 2 and 3.
I never played 2 and 3. I played the first one at my cousin's house so long ago, and I was like, you know what? I only played the first 3 levels. I want to see the rest of the game. So I started playing all of it.
I've told my story about Pac-Man 2 enough times. You can probably just search it on the GameCola website and find what I had to say. Is that everything you've been playing, John?
Yeah. Want me to go in depth on any of them, or just move on because we already went into
I think, yeah, we're getting up in time, and we've covered a lot of ground today, too. So let's just hit off on everything. Anna, did you have any games that you've played in recent times that you haven't talked about yet?
Aside from Animal Crossing, I've been playing Just Dance 2020, Crypt of the Necrodancer, Taiko no Tatsujin, is that how you say that? Drum and Fun. I just want to remind everyone I'm very white.
That's alright.
But I've been playing those on my Switch. I've been playing a lot of Sims 4 between playing Animal Crossing and doing work. I've also been playing a lot of Animal Crossing. Which, am I allowed to talk about the stuff pack, or should I save that one?
Yeah, you can talk about it. I was going to ask you about it, but also you just said that in between going to work and playing Animal Crossing, you've been playing Animal Crossing.
I did? Oops, I meant Sims 3. Sims 4, oh god.
Sims, hey,
Today's been so long, guys.
Okay, Anna, tell us the cool story that will round out a narrative that started out a few podcasts ago about Sims 4.
So for The Sims 4, there's been these polls for the new stuff pack or game pack or whatever that is going to revolve around crafting and most notably knitting. And so they recently came to the last one and all the announcements were made, and I need to look it up because I forgot immediately what it is. But the last poll was based around the name of the pack and the icon that was going to be used. And let me just look it up. They posted it earlier this week, I believe. But yeah, the most recent announcement has been a few of the things that are going to be in the new stuff pack, as well as the name and icon. And so, the name of it is going to be... Where is it? Where is it? Where's the name?
Maybe the name was so bad they just completely deleted it off the internet. They were like, nope, we're going back to the drawing board. Hang on a second.
Oh no. Okay, so the name was announced on May 1st, I think. Alright, so the name right now is Sims 4 Nifty Knitting Stuff Pack, which, not a huge fan of the name, but the icon is like just 2 balls of yarn in a basket with 2 knitting needles stabbed into one of the yarn balls. And so in the game, it will feature some new clothes, some of which you actually have to knit to be able to wear. There is a rocking chair now, and also a cool... I'm reading this. Also in this pack is a cool feature called Plopsy. Yes, Plopsy. It's Etsy.
What?
They have made Etsy.
Oh.
In Sims.
Oh my god.
So you can sell things like paintings, woodwork sculptures, and as well as knitting stuff. So that's what's coming up. it's not going to be the next pack that's coming out, because the next pack, actually, I just saw a trailer for it yesterday, is going to be eco-living stuff. But
didn't they already do that?
I think they announced it.
They have
a while back.
I'm fairly certain they did like some kind of eco-friendly living like pack.
Tiny living. That's the one that came out. Yeah. Which
yeah.
I don't
Some people
own.
call that minimalism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
How many expansion packs has? Because first of all, when did Sims 4
came out in September of 2014. There have been. Let me open. Origin.
I would hazard a guess to say that there have been over a dozen expansion packs released for Sims 4.
There have been so many, and the thing is, they've kind of replaced. So what The Sims 3 did is they had an online store where you could buy different things. What Sims 4 has done has gotten rid of that and has replaced it with game packs, stuff packs, and expansion packs. So there are 3 different packs. The game packs, I can't remember if the stuff packs or game packs are first in this, but one of them is about $10. That is basically what you would have gotten in The Sims 3 online. Just like a collection of objects and clothes and hairstyles in a certain setting. So like there's a bowling one, there's a fitness one, I think. There's backyard movie stuff or something. Origin is having a sale on some stuff. The $10 ones aren't on sale, but the next tier up is like, I think $20. It's like between $15 and $20. I can't remember. But that one's like spa stuff, camping stuff, traveling stuff. And then there are the expansion packs, which are bigger. I'm about to count these. Give me a sec. But I own every expansion pack. I don't own every single one of the other ones because there are less of them.
When did buying video games become so complicated?
Yeah.
Ever since Sims came out.
Yeah. Ever
so
since
there are
EA
currently
decided...
8 expansion packs with the next one coming out in June.
8?
There are 8 expansion packs. Game packs. There are 8 game packs. Sweet. And there are a lot of stuff packs because, like I said, those ones are cheaper and they have just random stuff.
Gotcha. Wow, that's...
Didn't we fill out a poll for one of these things? I feel like we did. I know which podcast it was. I don't remember if we filled out a poll. Podcast 134, Quizzing a Man into Existence.
All right, so there are 16 stuff packs. That's like twice as many as both of the other ones. But yeah, Quizzing a Man into Existence, that was actually a new feature that they updated with where you could take a quiz and make a human. And our human was honestly the best.
That's just the name of the podcast, not the actual feature.
But no, that's in Create a Sim. They had a new feature at the time, but that was like a year ago now, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that I really want that knitting stuff pack because I am big into crafting and not knitting per se, but crocheting, as I've been making a blanket this entire time.
Nice.
But
I was gonna say this pack seems pretty up your alley.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I know a lot of other people are just like, "Oh, that's dumb," but screw off. I want to have fun.
Oh,
let me have fun. But no, I'm very excited
sitting on her
for that.
rocking chair on her porch with her knitting needles, just waving them violently.
That's me.
You kids, let me have my fun.
That's not even me in 30 years. That's me right now.
I also like how they didn't have a rocking chair before the knitting pack. They were like, no, hang on, we gotta save this because nothing says knitting like sitting in a rocking chair.
The thing is, and I've seen a few people comment on this with like that announcement of just like everything that's going to be in the pack. Someone was like, I really want there to be something for elders because there honestly isn't a ton of exclusive things for elders really. Because once toddlers finally came to the game, everyone was just so focused on the toddlers. And so I think there's a special There are a few special things that have to do with the rocking chair and elders. It's not exclusively for elders, like other people can sit on it, I'm sure, but that was a big
this
thing.
This rocking chair is only for old people.
You can only sit in a rocking chair if you are old.
It's illegal.
You must be at least this old to ride.
But yeah,
as soon as you start lowering yourself, the cops burst through the door.
Yeah. Stop right there.
What do you think you're doing? No, so I'm really excited for that one, but otherwise I haven't really been playing a ton of other games aside from one other, which I can talk about later because, like, next podcast, because I haven't completely finished it, but Coffee Talk, which is basically if you took Valhalla and made it urban fantasy, and instead of alcohol, it was tea and coffee. And it's
for a second, I thought you were just gonna say tea, and it's like that is quite a misnomer of a game. Coffee Talk, a game where you drink tea.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically just Valhalla, except urban fantasy and coffee and tea.
Also seems very up your alley.
Yeah,
I do want to hear your thoughts on that on the next episode. I have heard about that game, so.
Do we have a cliffhanger on this episode of the GCPC?
What will happen next? Tune in next time.
Yeah. Jeddy, did you have any games that you've been playing that we didn't cover?
There is one more. I played Katamari Damacy Reroll. I enjoyed that. That was actually before I...
Is that a sequel or a remake?
Remake.
Or a remake of a sequel?
No, it's just a remake of the first game.
Okay.
But, it's been, 15 years or something since I played the game.
Yeah, no, I didn't remember which one it was.
Yeah. It was really good. It was another one that actually I got really into and just like burned through in a few days. It is interesting because having played this after playing Donut County, I realize now how much of Katamari Damacy is Donut County.
Yep.
That it's basically just the same game but with holes.
Yes.
Instead of, yeah.
Yes.
I didn't realize quite exactly how much it was like that. But I did also notice I prefer the Donut County method of play better because it's more of a puzzle game. It's more of once you get going, you just kind of keep building up. Whereas Katamari Damacy, it's very easy to somehow randomly get trapped between two objects and just shaken until you lose so much of your diameter or whatever that it's impossible to beat the level. And the concept of like, it's not really a puzzle game because you keep running into things that are like knocking you down. And I much prefer if I have trouble with something, it's not because it's annoying, it's because I need to figure it out or whatever. Like, I like the puzzle aspect of that, and the number of ways that you can fail just due to, like, oh, stuff keeps hitting you, or like, oh, you went to the wrong section, and everything in here was too big, and you wasted a bunch of time running around not getting anything.
And then there's the whole levels that are about, like, avoiding accidentally picking up a certain type of object, and you, like, the challenge is you can't see what you're doing.
Yeah.
I personally love those ones. The first time...
Those seem really frustrating to me.
Yeah, no, I thought it was hilarious the first time that I ran into, I believe he described it as microscopic, a bear, but it was like the world's tiniest, like, you can't actually tell that that's what it is until you hit it.
Yeah.
That I found hilarious. I actually really enjoyed all of those puzzle levels where you're making the constellations as opposed to making just stars. No, I enjoyed
That's fair.
Katamari Damacy despite
I'm glad
the things that I said I didn't like about it.
I'm glad that you are able to enjoy modern video games. I was beginning to worry that the narrative that would be constructed over the course of the GameCola podcast was that Jeddy didn't play new video games
for
a really long time. And then as soon as he started playing new video games, he hated all of them.
And that was something that I had to search inside myself to find this. But like I was
it's
concerned.
His character arc. It's his character arc.
I was concerned that something's changed within me that I can no longer literally enjoy video games. But
that would be really trouble.
Oh, that would be very upsetting for me.
Yeah.
Editor
I mean,
of
we'd still
GameCola.net, video game hater.
Yeah, forced to resign because he hates video games.
That should be a fabricated.
Yeah.
You either
Meanwhile, on the Onion Gaming.
Yeah. Hard drive magazine.
Gosh.
you either
I mean, it would still be good. It would still be good podcast content because some of my favorite sections of the podcast are the ones where you go into this game and how terrible it is.
Yeah.
But I don't think.
I mean, if you want to hear me
I
talk,
don't think that's sustainable emotionally.
if you really want to hear me talk about a video game that I hated, I can talk about Trials of Mana. Maybe on the next episode.
Oh, wait,
Maybe
like
on the next
the
episode
new
we'll add
game?
another clip.
Yeah, they're releasing a 3D remake of it.
Yeah,
but
I've been playing it.
They released the original in the collection of Mana.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fun
I've been playing both.
We talked about it a little bit earlier on the cast.
Yeah, and I did not enjoy it. There were many things about it that I didn't like particularly.
Interesting. Wow.
We'll have to address that on the next episode of the GameCola podcast. Now there's 2 cliffhangers.
Also-
Luckily, they're done by the 2 people who are like on every podcast. So
Yeah,
I'll certainly
it's
come back.
Cliffhanger
on.
and it's never
Hey,
resolved
now.
for 18 years.
Can I also say, hopefully, maybe a GameCola superfan out there can tell me why I think that James played Moonlighter.
Yeah, I
Someone
have
please
no
explain.
idea why you
'Cause
thought I'd played that game, or
it's
like
not- It's not mentioned on the site anywhere. Like, none of the article descriptions mention Moonlighter, so it's really difficult.
Is it in the Discord?
Maybe.
Yeah, like,
I'll have to
search the
search after the
because
podcast.
I have
Yeah.
never heard of this game before.
Because the other thing is, I was like, okay, well, maybe it was somebody else. Maybe somebody, maybe Matt Breslau or something was on the podcast. But he hasn't been on any of the ones where I would have talked about it. You know, like, I'm really... It's bothering me. Can any GameCola fan, you out there in internet land listening right now, can you tell me when I talked about Moonlighter?
Yeah, why he thinks I had anything to do with that game?
Yeah, was I talking about a different game? And I just thought
That's
maybe...
all I can think is that you may have just been thinking you were talking about one game, but really you were talking about something else. Because I'm sure
I honestly don't.
I'm sure we've
remember
talked
you
about
talking
games
about
that I played
Moonlighter.
that I like or that you don't like or something similar. But I know we've talked about something like that, but it definitely was not this game. I don't remember what game it was though.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up the podcast and we can figure it out. So thank you for listening to this episode of the GameCola podcast. If you like what you heard, please find us on our actual internet website, GameCola.net, or our YouTube channel, GCDotNet, the letter G, the letter C, the word dot, the word net. Social media, like Twitter and Facebook. I'm just going to go through it all real quick because we're running out of time. Just search GameCola and you'll find us. If you want to find us on a certain platform and we're there, just search GameCola. That goes for podcasts like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That goes for things like Twitch. And if you want to find the Discord, you can find it in our Twitter description or in the article on the GameCola website that you can find in the article's description, or on the top of the site page. I think there's also a link to the Discord. And you can come and ask us questions and tell Jeddy why he thinks that anyone has played Moonlighter except for him.
Join the Discord and let me know.
Yep.
Also, I don't know if we talked about this the last time, but the Minecraft server, I don't know if we had it up last podcast, but James has very graciously set up the GameCola Minecraft server. I've been having some fun with people. I've been playing. We had a launch stream, and then I've been playing with Dana and Little Winky, on and off. It's also been a very busy time for me. I don't actually have 1 million hours to play video games, so I'm busier than ever.
Okay, rub it in.
I don't see this as a good thing. I'm not getting paid to be busy. Anyway. Thank you for listening. I think I covered all of the things. I mean, you can listen to another podcast and
fan mail,
other things that I made. Oh yeah, I mean you can send it to the email. Usually we do. The Discord has
nowadays.
been more responsive.
Yeah, that's true.
Than the. I mean, there's podcasts at GameCola.net if you want to send us an email. I have not been mentioning it as much just because even when I do mention it, people usually either do like Twitter or the Discord now, anyways. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful time of day wherever it is, whenever it is you are listening to this podcast, and we will see you later.
Bye, everyone.
I don't know next month. Everything's kind of wild right now, but
hopefully
soon.
Stay safe, everybody.
Yes.
Stay
Bye.
safe. Stay healthy. Bye.
I weirdly find that there's a plane going on. Hold on. I'm going to wait.
Wow.
John, why don't you go? There's a plane happening.